Hey, everybody, this is Genesis. It is Brad and John. Brad, how's it going today?
Pretty good. How you doing, John?
We're doing fantastic. We are starting the new year, 2022. And of course, 2021 had one of the most wild rides in the whole cryptocurrency space. You have any thoughts on what 2021 was all about?
It sure was pretty wild. Yeah, and I think it will be one of those times when you look back on where the mainstream started to really embrace a lot of the stuff around crypto, and on the flip side, the big institutions also realizing that there's a lot of gains ahead for this. So it was a really exciting year, but this year I think is a lot more exciting because everybody that knew that crypto is going to be a thing now 2022 is when that's going to start to become more in our everyday life, and it's pretty exciting what's gonna happen this year.
Case in point, I'm now known as the Bitcoin guy at the local wine shop, which is pretty interesting because people are hearing, they're paying more attention, they're asking more questions. I'm getting a lot of people from the side streets just saying, hey, I want to know a little bit more about this because it was all over the news and all over publications last year. So let's just dive into
For
it because
sure.
one of the bigger questions that keep coming up that I see. I know last week we talked about Bitcoin and kind of given the foundation of what that is. The next biggest cryptocurrency, as we know, is Ethereum, and that's based on what? Smart contracts. So we want to talk today about smart contracts, what they are, how they work within the framework of cryptocurrencies, and particularly Ethereum, and then discuss some of the use cases on where it is today and over the next couple of years, what industries we feel that it's going to be impacting the most. So why don't you give everybody just a brief update on smart contracts in your overview?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's without going too technical, smart contracts are a way to program inside of these cryptocurrencies. And so it essentially gives you programmable money, which is really exciting. And so to take a step back here, when we think about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a decentralized ledger that anyone can run a node, and it's just a very secure way to store your wealth. On top of that, though, many years ago, this guy named Vitalik Buterin, he saw that there was the functionality was there to create a much more powerful network. And with Bitcoin being able to handle decentralized transactions, he learned that you can do stuff on top of that even further. And so fast forward to now, we have now basically come upon this concept of a smart contract. And a smart contract is a set of programmable rules that determine what happens in the system. So I'll just give a brief example and then we'll get into it. So if you think about, I love this example. So say in a developing nation, say in Africa, there's a farmer and a farmer wants to have crop insurance, and that crop insurance probably is non-existent in the normal legacy systems, but if there's less than 2 inches of rain, they will get paid out that insurance. And in the legacy system, there's a lot of people in the middle of this. Maybe they can combat it where it's like, oh, this technicality happened, or you can't get paid out because of this. Well, in the smart contract, if AccuWeather says there was 1.7 inches of rain, and at the end of the year there's 1.7, that smart contract will pay out that insurance policy. If there was 2.2 inches of rain, it won't pay it out. So that's a really fascinating example where there's just so much utility inside of these smart contracts that allow for an exchange of currency, and it's really going to take over the world with that concept. Was that clear?
Yeah. So what I'm thinking of when you think of that is, of course, you brought up maybe third world type of situations. I'm thinking also first world stuff. Just here in the U.S. is, there's still whatever industry. We'll talk about industries as well, but where there's just a lack of trust that's been
Yeah.
built, and there's, like
Yeah.
you said earlier, there's too many hands in the pot, right? There's too many players in every transaction, both sides. So it's almost as if this smart contract, the whole basis is to level the playing field, so there's more trust amongst the primary players, and when we say a smart contract, it literally is a contract built in the blockchain, right?
For
That
sure.
if X happens, then Y, takes place. So there's actual just automated functionality in a contract where when things are done, it's checked, and then currency of probably cryptocurrency can then be funneled to either party, right?
Yeah. So I've talked about this in the past, but there's the Ethereum virtual machine. So Ethereum is the largest in market cap crypto that has these smart contracts built into it. You can argue that the new update with Bitcoin has a quasi smart contract built into it, but when we're talking about smart contracts, it really comes down to this EVM, this Ethereum virtual machine, and it's any smart contract inside of it can be thought of as a function. So that function, whatever it's coded to be, and you deploy it into the blockchain, there's no going back. Once it's there, it's there. And when those rules suffice, it's gonna fire that function. And there's a lot of things that happens with that. So it eliminates all the middlemen, so all that trust. That you can really trust code. You can't trust bureaucracies and legacy systems and profit motives. And there's a lot of reasons why contracts don't work out in the real world. And so when it's all just very transparent code that you can see that if this happens, then this happens, it's incredibly straightforward. So I'll just give one more example in more close to home would be real estate. So right now there's clearing companies, there's the
Escrow,
the escrow, just like
title.
all of these different things that are happening. But if you look at it, it's just a couple of different contracts that you're signing, and then a couple people verify it, and you get a notary. Like there's just a few different steps. Why can't that be replaced with code? And right now, it's not really a big thing to have real estate on a blockchain, but it's only a matter of time until stuff like that starts to go on a blockchain, and all of those transactions will be done through smart contracts. So, if you pay $200,000 for this property, it's going to then go to this new holder. And so then whoever is the holder, that's who owns the property. There's no middleman. There's no gray area. It's cut and dry. And that's why they call them smart contracts, is that they really are smart. They just do what they're programmed to do. And it's really going to take over every industry, but real estate's a huge one.
So we'll talk more about the real estate stuff, because that's just this massive overarching theme. So Bitcoin versus Ethereum, and you brought up the founder, Vitalik, who created Ethereum back in 2013, I believe it was.
Give or take.
So how come Bitcoin's not involved in smart contracts? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, so I think the last major update was 2012, and back then you think about like the internet was a drastically different thing. The internet speeds weren't that good. And so one of the biggest fights in Bitcoin back in the day was the size of the overall system, like how much megabytes you basically could put into it. And when the bandwidth was really low, it was really tiny. And so their solution has since been to put stuff on top of it. So that's where you'll hear layer 2s and all that. There's the Lightning Network. There's a lot of innovations happening in Bitcoin. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is a great store of wealth. You buy it and you just want to hold it for as long as you want, pass it down to your grandkids or whatever. Ethereum was purposely built for this. So you see this with a lot of technology where a new innovation will happen and you try to like bolt on these these new innovations to something that really works really well. It never really works out, because the ones that are purposely built for these new innovations are just going to perform better. And there's a recent update with Bitcoin that allows it a little bit, but it's still quasi. The ones that are really exciting are the ones that are going even further, that are pushing the innovation ahead. So if you think about Ethereum's been around for almost a decade now, and it revolutionize the way that currency can change hands in the internet. But then on top of it, now there's new companies like, you see like Avalanche, you've probably heard of like Solana, and there's just a really grown, there's Phantom Network, there's just a growing number of these layer one is what we're talking about. And without going too complicated, if you think about sedimentary layers with like rocks, so the oldest one is on the bottom, and that's like a layer one. That's in the legacy system, that would have been gold or something along those lines. And then a layer two was the US dollar. Well, a layer one in crypto is going to be Ethereum, Avalanche, all of these different ones that can provide this really solid foundation. And then on top of it are more and more modern ways to scale the system. So there's a lot more than Ethereum. There's just a ton of different projects out right now trying to be that smart contract provider for even banks, but definitely like real estate and insurance companies. It's going to be for voting systems eventually.
So let's talk about that. Let's get into some of the use cases, because I know that people want to know, okay, I understand the concept. It's a smart contract that the first thing I think of is, are we going to have all these attorneys writing these smart contracts, or is it just going to be peer-to-peer? You and I want to agree on, I can buy the shirt off your back, right? And it has to have certain things to it. We're going to write these contracts. We'll put them up on the platforms, right? But I'm thinking more, you just said voting rights, and there's real estate. There's just a ton of use cases out there. So let's talk about that. That's where I think most people will understand this thing. So let's talk about voting rights. So that's been a big one, of course, from the last presidential election. How do you think that Ethereum and the smart contract is going to, get rid of some of the big issues that came up from that in the press?
Well, that is a really good example that we can use here, because if you think about the current voting structure is incredibly legacy meaning it's kind of a black box. There's a lot of people that we don't even know controlling it. There's a lot of areas for people to doubt the legitimacy. And while it's since been proven that it was one of the most secure elections this past year, it still caused so much doubt in people's minds, because it's these faceless organizations running these boxes. There's no publicly auditable ledger. There's just a lot of areas where middlemen can do malicious stuff, or even not. Maybe they're not even trying to do malicious stuff. Maybe they drop something, or they put, they hit the delete key on accident. You never know what humans can do. Humans are very fallible beings. We make mistakes. But code, on the other hand, can be publicly audited. It's all open source, so you can see what's happening. And when everything happens on a blockchain, anybody in the world can see what actually happened. And so that is drastically different from the voting environment that we have right now. So if you think about in the future, as long as everyone, and I would be really shocked if we did our US elections through Ethereum or something like that. There'd probably be some purposely built blockchain for that. Just, I'd be really shocked if they used Ethereum, but there'd be something like this where it uses a public blockchain and smart contracts that every single registered voter would have some sort of way to validate that that's them. It'd be through a wallet address, basically, and then they would be able to go in and vote. And that the voting would happen through the smart contract of, okay, these are the candidates, which one do you select? And it would register it on the blockchain. It would be anonymous for who voted. It'd just be a string of random characters. It's not like you'd be able to go and see who your neighbor voted for. But in the grand scheme of things, you would be able to audit it in a way where you knew there's this many registered voters, and these are the people that they voted for. And it would be so much better in terms of public trust, because one of the biggest challenges is that all of this legacy systems, people are waking up to how manipulated it is, and how just in general there's so much room for error and profit motives that just push different people into the wrong direction. So with all of this publicly available information, it prevents a lot of that from happening.
It's redundancy, right? It's in business today and politics today, wherever it is, there are just systems after redundancy and layers and layers, that all that cost, all that, I'll use the word, all that fat just is going to be cut out in the future by using smart contracts. So when you said that you can, put in your vote, it'll be on a blockchain for everyone to see. Of course, now we're talking about blockchain and the DeFi, the decentralization of what the whole blockchain and Ethereum and stuff is. So we have a smart contract sitting out there. Anyone can see that, right? They'll be able to get the code and be able to go in and verify the transaction, right?
Yeah. And that's what's really cool about all of this, is that anybody can see it, but at the same time, it's all encrypted. So it's not like who's doing what, but it's also very it's very open. So it just provides a whole layer of security because of that. And so, like, even if you think about open source software, so the most popular one that's around is, in my opinion, would be Linux. So Linux, I'll just take you back in the past a little bit. So Linux was created by Linus Torvald, and he created the foundation for pretty much most of the computers that we use today. And everything was built on top of that. Now, fast forward to Ethereum, the very same, in my opinion, the same concept is that the EVM, the virtual machine, the Ethereum virtual machine. So all of these, even Avalanche uses EVM. There's other ones that don't use EVM, but we'll take Avalanche for instance. They all use that same core, just like how my Mac uses Linux, and some random computer might use Linux. They all use the same core. And so all of these different researchers and developers can work on the same thing and continually make it better, while still improving the different products that are built on top of it. So it's, when it comes to these smart contracts, there's so much things that we haven't even thought about that's possible. Like when Linux was first being created, would they have known that you could take like these high-end photos with a phone? No, but it was setting that foundation that allowed for all of this innovation to be built on top of it. So the insurance example, the real estate example, all these different examples are really the low-hanging fruit. But these are just ones that, are pretty obvious. Fast forward 10, 20 years from now, there's going to be some pretty crazy use cases of this smart contract technology.
Well, I think for investors, people don't buy stocks and bonds on Wall Street. Their smart contracts will be able to allow the flow of funds and the transaction to settle, instantly, right?
Instead of T2. Like right now, it takes 2 days to settle a transaction in the stock market.
72 hours going through the clearinghouse. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And the same for real estate. Let's talk about real estate, because right now that's on everyone's mind. Real estate going through the roof around the world. The amount of paperwork and redundancy. We have title companies. Most people don't even know what title companies do. Mm-hmm. We have escrow companies where it's just another middleman, a middle person who is getting paid a fee to basically check that the seller's responsibilities have been completed and the buyer's responsibilities have been completed, so that monies can flow that goes to the mortgage or to the lender, the bank, so they can release title and have title information there. And then there's real estate agents who obviously get in the check. So there's 20, 30 different layers of contractual things in a real estate transaction that are completely outside of the box. So there's no way to manage it very efficiently. But I'm certain that through smart contract, that there's going to be a lot of industries within real estate. They're going to be completely wiped out over the next, 10 to 20 years, as their function isn't going to be necessary, because it's going to be completely peer-to-peer. It's going to be flowing from a decentralized standpoint.
Yeah, yeah, and we're gonna, just like how we're starting to see truck drivers being replaced with autonomous trucks. That's going to be a huge thing. People think that it needs to be like a physical robot to replace these jobs, but this is going to replace so many jobs, which in the short run is bad, but in the long run it makes our society so much better, because the lack of trust that exists right now in the world is huge. And how are we going to overcome that? We have to have some sort of thing that we can all mutually trust, and that's where these smart contracts are going to really transform society from the ground up, and just allow for our civilization to get to that next layer of what do maybe the person that works at the trust company doesn't want to be, or the title company doesn't want to be there. Maybe they want to be an artist, but they have to have this job. So, maybe it's, in the grand scheme of things, a good thing. And so all of these middlemen, middle people, are going to be going away. And it's just, it's an unfortunate thing for them, but in the long run, it's going to be great for our society in general.
Well, like in any change that happens, Brad, as well as I do, that this type of change, at first people fear it, and then they embrace it after time goes on. They realize that there's advantages to these type of technologies. And
Yeah.
I see that, the whole crypto space, but smart contracts in 2021, that concept started to hit public a little bit more.
Mm.
But over the next couple of years, I think it's one of the areas of cryptocurrency for people to spend a little more time understanding how the implications are, because they have to look within and say, am I one of those pieces of fat that's going to get cut, right? Who knows where that thing's going? But this was a real good discussion. I know
Yeah, I
for our
enjoyed it.
audience, for our audience and listeners, we like to stick with 21 minutes for our discussion every week, in honor of the 21 million Bitcoin that are being produced over the next 100 years or so. So, Brad, any final comments before we wrap it up today?
Just research EVM. I'm telling you, once you start looking at EVM, you'll see, and then that will help you in investing, because you'll understand more about what these cryptocurrencies are doing, and it's going to just help you understand where the world is headed. So smart contracts are the future, and I really enjoyed talking with you this week. And
love it. We hope you enjoyed it too as well. This is Brad and John with Genesis. We hope you come back for next week, when we talk about another educational piece of the cryptocurrency world that will help you navigate through what we believe is going to be the biggest trend in our lifetimes. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Brad.
thanks, John. Have a good one.
You too.